Sometimes, even for people in the business, aquascapes just go wrong. I created this tank last year during a flurry of creativity, but as the pond season at Pond Life Aquatics got busier, my time just dwindled. This little 15 litre took the brunt of it. On top of that, the tank got moved, making the filter almost impossible to clean. I tried a few times to tidy it up, but it was never the same. I just lost heart and gave up on it being what I originally envisioned. I started by removing the mass of ram's horn snails that had grown in the tank. While doing this, I found a lone Neocaridina that I moved into the El Capitan scape. Next up, I vacked out as much of the substrate as I could and moved outside. I laid down a soft surface to work on and get to work. I always prefer working outside when breaking down tanks. There's just much less chance of accidents. I remove all the old hardscape and place it in a bucket ready to get clean later on. I also decided to work without the white background because I just didn't want it. I dumped out the rest of the substrate and I use a hose to rinse down the last of the waste and pour it away. Finally, I use blades and aquarium sponges to get the tank back to a blank slate. So I take my time and make sure the tank is almost as good as new. I decided for this scape to use a air sponge just to get around the fact that cleaning the last filter was so difficult. A simple bubble filter has a solid biological capacity and no risk of killing shrimps in the intake. Plus, the black sponges, when upright, are unintrusive and easy to service. The little Interpet air pump will just make moving things easier in future. For this scape, I'm using RESCAPED soil. It's a really great aqua soil with a large buffering capacity to help balance my water chemistry for the shrimp I want to keep in the future. It also slowly releases beneficial nutrients to my plants to help them grow effectively without overwhelming the water column. I decided to go with a nice simple, slight gradient from front to back to help give a sense of depth and give different plants' root systems plenty of space. This is the piece of Dragonstone I decided to go for. It's from an old scape that I shut down ages ago, so I gave it a really good scrub before placing it into the tank. And I love it for its natural ridges and holes. I wanted this scape to look more jungly, so decided to take some Mopani twigs and place them alongside the natural ridge lines in the rock. This was one of the most fiddly parts of the scape itself, but I think I got there in the end. I really like the way that the wood kind of meshes in with the rock itself, making it more in keeping with my overall vision for how I want the scape to look in the end. Finally, I set the whole thing in place with super glue, which again takes a bit of time, but I finally spray the whole thing down with some RO water so that I don't leave watermarks all over the place, and I leave it to set. Choosing plants for this aquarium, I wanted it to have an instantly finished look. So I chose out a selection of slow growing, medium growing, and fast growing plants that I was just going to use an absolute mass of in the aquarium itself. Luckily for me, at Pond Life Aquatics, we always have a great selection of plants in, and this week in particular, we'd had a really amazing selection of plants come in. To prepare the plants, I gently remove the rock wool from the root systems. This is a Bucephalanda Sintang Red, which is a super delicate little boost species. But with some patience, I wash off the rock wool and prepare all the plants ready to go into the aquarium. Attaching the rhizome planting to my hardscape was a delicate process. Working with booths is something I've had to get used to over the years. It's so small and usually tweezers are necessary. I use an aquascaping glue to set them to the rock and finally cover the white superglue marks with Java moss. This is a great trick I picked up along the way for hiding any imperfections on the hardscape. I finished the piece off with some Nubius nana, making it look like a larger version of the beautiful little boozers. Now for the long part, stem planting. I start with the background plants. I take the individual stems of Limnophilia sessiflora ambula and frame the hardscape with it. I place a lot around the back as well, so eventually it will grow to create a sort of curtain in front of the filter. Next up is the Podgestimum octopus. This is a slightly harder to find species of plant that I absolutely love. Its spindly arms look like an octopus's tentacles, hence the name, and given enough light, it goes crazy. Plus, it looks great from the off, looking like underwater vines. Next up, I plant the Cryptocorin Wendetti Brown. Crypt is one of the easiest species in the world to grow. I love it. My home aquariums have nearly 10 different species alone, so I couldn't help but add one in. Plus, the brown leaves help add a much needed bit of contrast to help separate the lush green background from the foreground. Finally, I use a tub of Dwarf Sag in vitro to plant the foreground. I wish I had 2 pots of this, and I may add to it later. Dwarf Sag is the lazy man's carpet. It just does its thing even in low-tech aquariums. Leave it alone, and it will cover the floor of your aquarium in beautiful little plants. Finally, I place the aquarium back in its spot on the shelf, plug in the air pump, and get ready to fill. I place a plastic bag in the tank to stop any plants from getting blown out of place, and begin the fill. I'm using RO water from home that's been remineralized to help reduce the chances of an algae bloom and give my plants the best chances of doing well. I didn't quite bring enough RO water to finish it off that night, but I liked the way the aquarium was looking, so I decided to call it a night and head on home. The next day, I topped up the rest of the aquarium with RO water again, and I had added in some water sprite the night before after I finished filming, but I decided that it just wasn't the right look for such a small tank. It just looked completely out of place and like it was just some floating plant debris. So I decided to remove it and sub it out for something a bit daintier. I went for red root floater because I just love this plant. Under the right conditions, it goes bright red and sends beautiful little roots down into the tank itself. Overall, I'm super pleased with how this aquarium turned out. I'm going to aim to maintain it for about 15 minutes per week to stop it crashing like the last scape. For the time being, I'm going to just let it be and cycle on its own. So many plants, there's plenty of decaying material to kickstart the nitrogen cycle. Even though this way takes longer without a biological booster, I'm in no rush to add anything to this tank until it's found its good balance on its own. Personally, I would recommend this to pretty much any beginner aquascaper. It allows you to figure out maintaining your aquarium without the stress of livestock, and then when it's fully cycled, you'll be confident that you're ready for success. If you want to see how this tank grows in and develops, let me know in the comments below. If there's enough interest, I'll be sure to do a development video at around Christmas, I guess, to show you guys how it's getting on. For now though, that's all from me, and I hope you'll join me again next time for this Pond Life.